And joining us now to discuss the current state and future for electric vehicles is Daniel Turner, founder and executive director of Power the Future. Daniel, it's so good to see you. How are you doing?
No, it's great to be on with you. Thanks for having me.
All right, Daniel. So what is the current landscape for electric vehicles under the Trump administration? Because, Rivian, Tesla, Lucid, other companies potentially saying they're facing losses.
Yeah, electric vehicles now have to compete in the free market, and I have nothing against electric vehicles. I believe in freedom. Buy whatever vehicle makes sense for you, and that's the joys of living in America. But the idea that we're going to give these enormous tax credits to people who buy the vehicle that the president thinks they should be buying, or that we're going to outlaw competition, that's just all nonsense. And unfortunately for the electric vehicle as an industry, a lot of its success was predicated on just that: tax benefits, subsidies from the taxpayers, $7,500 checks if you bought one, and the threat of abolishing the fossil fuel combustion engine car with government mandates. All of that is gone now. And so people are saying, well, look at this poor industry, it's struggling. But it wasn't struggling in a free and fair market. And I think that level of parity will force this industry to compete. And if it actually has health and success, well, now it's the time to show it.
So you're saying that the market is dependent on incentives, right? And tax credits are actually going to end soon. And the Trump administration also eliminated penalties for fuel economy non-compliance. So I'm wondering, what is the impact of all this on the EV industry?
Yeah, again, the people who want an EV are going to be able to buy one. They're just not going to get a tax credit to do so. And there isn't that sense of urgency. Remember, President Biden had an executive order that he said half of all cars sold in the nation by 2030 have to be electric. How he intended to enforce that, God only knows. Had Kamala Harris won, how she would have enforced it remains to be seen. But that was an executive order. And so if you were in the EV industry, you thought, wow, this is going to force people to buy our product. Well, that's gone now. So again, you can still buy an EV. There are plenty on lots, but there isn't the force of government compelling you one way or another. And we buy roughly 18 million cars in America every year. Let the consumer buy the car that they want. Hybrids seem to be the most attractive. But this notion that the government will decide what vehicle you should drive is gone. And that's going to impact the EV industry, no doubt.
Do you think the regulatory changes are a temporary setback for EV makers?
They're temporary as long as President Trump is president. We could get a Gavin Newsom in 2029 who will bring the same punitive measures. But look at the chaos that creates. Look at the amount of revamping the big three did in Detroit, changing facilities to manufacture the car that the president wanted. Well, those are gone now, right? And Detroit has said that they're recommitting their facilities towards the regular combustion engine vehicle. They're going back to manufacturing SUVs because that's what the American people want to drive. So again, Joe Biden didn't do the EV industry any help by giving them this artificial life support. He inflated them beyond what their market shares were actually calling for. He inflated their value beyond what the market was deeming accurate. And now they're suffering a consequence. But that's just the heavy hand of government at work. So removing those government incentives and subsidies, it brings back parity. It brings back suffering for the industry, no doubt, but it is bringing back parity.
So you mentioned that earlier, EV makers now have to compete in the free market. I'm wondering, what's holding back more Americans from going electric?
Price point is a huge driver, right? You mentioned Rivian. Rivian's started around $100,000. I have a farm. I use lots of trucks. I have a pickup truck. I need them to do a certain job. I don't need to spend $100,000 for one, that's for sure. Teslas are expensive. The average purchaser of an EV makes over $120,000 a year, is predominantly men and predominantly white. Why is this group of people getting a $7,500 tax credit? They don't necessarily need one. So price point is what's kept it out of an option for most people. Distancing and charging is another problem. There's no doubt if you live in urban America, going a couple of blocks in an EV works fine. But we don't have a charging infrastructure network. Joe Biden promised 500,000 charging stations. That famous interview with Secretary Pete Buttigieg on, I believe it was Meet the Press, they announced that they had built 8. And they had wasted $7 or $8 billion in the process and only built 8 charging stations. Where'd all the money go? That remains to be seen. So there's not an infrastructure to charge it. People are nervous to get in a vehicle if they know that they can't have a reliable fuel source. And we are just not equipped yet with a network of charging stations. Again, none of these things are necessarily bad. The market will catch up, but the market will catch up at the speed with which Americans buy them. We never needed a government mandate to buy an iPhone, right? We never needed a government mandate to buy a laptop. And these industries seem to have flourished despite no government mandate. It's always interesting that what industries require the force of government to survive. And that's not the way our markets should work.
And Daniel, would you be able to comment on where the trajectory is going? What does the curve look like right now for EV adoption?
I think it's flattened tremendously. The big winner in all of this is Toyota, which is the world's largest automaker. And Toyota never went the EV route. And the CEO of Toyota said, we are going to stick with the hybrid model. They got a lot of pressure from the Biden administration to change that, and they didn't. And now they have been proven right. Again, there's always going to be a niche market of people who want an EV, and that's what the free market is for. But it seems like hybrids are where more people's appetite are, and then just the good old regular combustion engine, which is what people are comfortable with. You can use the force of government to change people's behavior, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting them a better or more reliable or more affordable product.
Okay, just one last question, and I'm thinking far into the future. If there are more charging stations, battery technology improves, would you ever see a scenario where electric vehicles could actually compete with combustion engine cars?
Sure. Who knows what the future holds? I called my organization Power the Future because I don't know what tomorrow is going to be, but I do know what we're doing right now. And right now we are in a fossil fuel driven economy. And if we punish ourselves now, we're not going to have a bright tomorrow. People look to other countries that have adopted EVs at a faster rate, but they don't tell an honest story. For example, the Scandinavian countries, where they brag that 90% of vehicles purchased are EVs. Well, EVs are exempt from the 25% EU VAT tax, right? So if you tell people you can buy one of 2 cars, this one has 25% tax, that one doesn't, that's not surprising that you're going to buy the cheaper one, right? They point to China and say China has a huge driver of electric vehicles, but China doesn't have a reliable source of gas or oil for gas, right? They are deeply dependent on the rest of the world for gas. And so they have a lot of coal, they have a lot of electricity. So EVs make a lot of sense in China. Plus, the country uses EVs to control people's movement. So there are a lot of countries that have adopted EVs, but they haven't adopted them for market reasons. They've adopted them for government manipulative reasons. And right now, we are not in an EV society. We may be one day, but I don't want to punish myself today in the hopes of a better tomorrow. I want to reward Americans today and let tomorrow take care of itself.
All right, great points there, Daniel. And another aspect we probably don't have time to get into today is the power grid. I mean, between AI data centers, electric vehicles, and other things, right? Is the electrical grid able to handle all that? It's probably a discussion we can have another time. But thank you very much for today, Daniel.
I welcome that opportunity. Thank you.